Good afternoon, Aristo.
Good morning, Ron. How are you today? Finally got my... Yeah, that's
You've been having some technical issues, I understand.
Yes, quite a bit. But they are fixed, so I'm raring to go.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you give a title at the very beginning here of what you plan to, how you plan to title it. I know you go wherever you go, but let's start with today with an actual title for what you want to call it.
Okay, off the top of my head then, let's just call it meditation. What it is and its ramifications.
I'm actually interested in learning about this because I don't agree with a lot of the teachings about meditation of mindlessness. I like mindful rather than mindless meditation.
I've been working on a little text and I haven't finished it because I ran into a lot of, I did a little bit more research on various other opinions from celebrated yogis, authorities, and all that, but modern ones. And I also ran into several disagreements. And even amongst the groups, there are, there isn't a singular consensus. There is along general lines, but the way I translate it and understand it and apply it is somewhat different than how other people. Then again, meditation is a very, very general term. One person I read yesterday basically said, this is voiding the mind. Basically, what meditation is quieting the mind and then reaching a void state where you're not thinking anything, and then you rest in that state, and then eventually you get enlightened as you rest in that state. I view it as the complete opposite in the sense that the quieting of the mind is a stepping stone along the way that happens on its own. Now, everybody basically says the same thing, but they emphasize different aspects in such a way that it's easy for the novice to misunderstand. And then, I don't even know if they even do it on purpose, unconsciously, consciously, or lost in the translation, but behind the traditionalist, there's always this idea, well, if you don't get it, find a guru. Or rather, find a guru, just to be safe. But there are none. I mean, it's not like the old days where you could go out in a rural society and basically, hear about somebody out in the mountains or something like that and then go. Even when you did, each alleged teacher was different. So you had to find one that suited you. It wasn't basically, the whole ashram thing was a later development. It was basically almost like turning it into a corporation or something. And then religions became even more generalized. This is it's difficult to convey because it's very much tailored to the individual. So know thyself is very, very important. And this is why, the guy who wrote the aphorisms of yoga back in the days of Jesus, in India, of course, had people in mind that could not find a guru.
No, go ahead, keep going. I just took the phone off.
Okay. That could not find a guru, or basically the thing was that the gurus were becoming rare in those days. The true ones, the ones that were out in the forest, the mountains, the rivers, the hidden ones. The oral tradition was waning, so they started creating a written tradition to preserve it. In a similar manner, Indian yogis saw that with the advent of Western civilization for the first time, Indian culture is one of the most resistant to infusions of other religions and ideologies. They always adapt, but they always adapt in a way that the resistance increases and that they preserve some essence. Even when their own priesthoods become corrupt, there are grassroots movements of the old traditions that renew it in different ways. But with the advent of the Western infiltration, they saw that this was finally changing because the young people were being swayed into a whole different direction. And everybody was becoming much more materialistic, and basically the old ways were being forgotten. So they figured, ingenious as they were, well, we got to bring these old ways to the Westerners. They're the ones that are going to preserve the traditions because we're all becoming Westerners anyways. However, the difficulty there's a resentment, like I mentioned before, because India is a colonial country. So to give your prized cultural treasures, your oral traditions, to the civilization that basically dominates you under the guise of actually helping them was something that really stuck in the gullet of a lot of people. But I think it's stuck in their gullet in a kind of, well, we can't give them everything. We have to give them, well, we have to make them work for it. At the same time, you have different attitudes from different civilizations. So there is a lot lost, not just in the translation from one civilization to the next, but in the translation from how people thought in ancient times to how they think in modern times. So basically, the whole idea is that these teachings are not dogma, and they're not restricted to a single culture, of course. I mean, later on I might get into stuff from other cultures. They become reference points to be able to turn within and find your own truth, because this is a human thing. I mean, it's almost like art is a human thing, speech is a human thing. Creativity, sexuality, the way humans do it is unique. And esoteric unfolding is also an organic human thing. It's part of our DNA. It's not something that, well, if you lose the teaching, it's gone. I mean, if that was the case, it'd be gone for good since the days of Atlantis or whatever. So it keeps rising every time it's repressed. And that's why religious repression never worked in any kind of permanent manner. And even religions couldn't repress the mystical traditions. That was basically how they evolved, to become repressors of the individual's potential. So with that introduction, I'd like to say that everything I talked about up till now in this series of lectures is meditation. And that meditation essentially reaches a culmination point in what I'm going to say today. People say, well, how do you meditate? Well, essentially, as Peter Van Run had said in an earlier thing, there is no specific how. There is a basic atmosphere that you reference, and this referencing creates a kind of resonance within you that reminds you of something that you may have done as a child. I mean, the reason I took to meditation was because I remember as a little kid I would do it spontaneously. I would play games of, asking myself, who am I? What am I? And try to feel into it. And I realized I was getting all these weird sensations, and like the world was spinning, and almost my thoughts would become different, and I noticed this. But since I was, my parents were immigrants, and society, the town where I lived wasn't really open to that. My name was funny, they made fun of me in school, blah, blah, blah. So I was basically not distracted by social conditioning or basically the group mindset. So I paid attention to this, and it kind of struck a chord with me, and it felt important. Most people may touch upon these things as a child, but society goes to great lengths to dampen them, to distract the child, to put them in a different direction. And even when they hit upon it again, they've lost that fundamental reference, that instinctual reference. And even if they haven't lost it, they're not sure if they've ever found it, because there's this constant noise that, that's not, this is the authority, that's the authority, this is the one that knows better. Everybody knows better than us. And this is one of the things that we are challenged to overcome these days, the idea that somebody else knows better than us, where our internal, organic, instinctive truth is concerned. I mean, sure, they may know something technical, they may have a piece of data, information, knowledge, experience, this, that, and the other, but there is a level, who knows better than you that what you're perceiving is real or not? Who knows better than you that what you feel is right or not? Who knows better than you than if you're in love or not? And yet people go to the experts for this. They go to the psychologists, counselors, pastors, priests, this, that, and the other, for all these things that they're designed to know for themselves. Of course psychopaths are going to engineer our society and do whatever the hell they want with us. The first thing they did since ancient times was create authority figures that know better. The priest, and because they help us, because they give us food, shelter, knowledge, healing, whatever they do, then they buy our own self-knowledge from us because of this. And in the end, they end up taking it. So this is one of the greatest resources we have. We need to reclaim our self-knowledge. And this is where our discernment comes from. You see all of this crap. Now, most people, if you really talk to them, like 50 years ago, a lot of the crap that passes off as truth today, they'd laugh at it. And today, a lot of the truth that we sense inside was unacceptable 50 years ago. So there's a constant, keeping us on our toes, a constant, like somebody who's making us dance because they're shooting at our feet. They blast one belief, create another belief. You're permitted to be religiously free now, but you're not permitted to be politically free or economically free. You might be permitted in a certain phase to be economically free, but your ideologies are being attacked. In the 50s, people in America were prosperous, but if you had any kind of liberal ideology, you were hounded and could go to jail. So they never allow you, they always keep your spectrum of perspective and freedom in these narrow confines so you can get accustomed to having narrow confines until you don't even notice that they're narrow confines and the box doesn't seem to have walls anymore. They're camouflaged. We just keep bumping into something and we don't know what it is, but it just makes us uncomfortable every time we do. So the authority tells us to just stay in one place and do as you're told, or else you're going to keep bumping into the electrical fence. What meditation does is recenter our perception and our whole cognition, not our cognition, but our sense of being, to a place where nobody can do this with us. It's a kind of reference frame, and it's not the do-all and be-all and end-all of it. It's a beginning step to be able to act on your own. And so one of the things that happens in meditation is indeed that the erroneous thoughts are quieted. The programming is quieted. Most people think verbally in order to stop thinking truly. Most people occupy their minds with thoughts to stop feeling something, to drown out, what they don't want to experience because of all of this conditioning and trauma and everything that keeps them from moving into a true liberational dynamic. So the important thing is meditation is strongly linked to energy. It's strongly linked to the sensory inversion thing, to be able to feel how we sense things. All of this cultivates a certain bridge between the energy sensate aspects of awareness and pure consciousness, which is essentially self-awareness. The thing is that now you become flexible with self-awareness, so it's not just a little ego point. You can widen it like a lens, you can narrow it, you can move it around, and you can hold it in place. Holding it in place in a nice relaxed manner is basically concentration. This is true for perceptions, but it's also true for thoughts, it's true for feelings. You can basically keep it's not tensing, it's basically moving your attention around. So the key definition of meditation, what it really is when you turn your attention onto the source of your attention. You realize what the source of your attention is deep within. And this source of your attention, first of all, you have your senses, and that's an organic, they're hardwired. So internalizing your senses basically gets you used to how the role that your five senses play in relation to the source of your attention. When you experience energy, you're actually amplifying your ability to feel the source of your attention, because it's not just some abstract, nebulous, ungrounded thing. It's very, very organic. It's in everything. In fact, when you touch the source of your attention, you realize that, wow, this is omnipresent. This is a dimensionless point that basically is infinite. At the same time, it's infinitely dimensionless, pinpointed, infinitely small, but it's also infinitely large, and it's also omnipresent. It defies any kind of restriction. And hence people consider that when they experience this source of their own awareness that's beyond whatever they consider their own, they call it, well, this must be God. I mean, what else could God be but this? Or basically, technically, you might call it spirit, because it's actually one polarity. Attention moving into manifestation, into our experience of feeling the world, desire, those things are the other half. You might call it the feminine half. And together they come and form God. But many power-hungry people understood the power of attention, and because they were also in denial, you try to use attention to manipulate and deny feelings, and feelings are the true redeemer. Attention is the facilitator of feelings. Trying to force something with your attention alone, it's like this. The male half, the yang half, the radiant, luminous part of the divine has to do with the nature of attention at the divine level, at all levels. And so consciousness and attention are basically, yes?
No, I'm just thinking. I'm sorry.
No problem. Now, these things may be strange because I'm approaching them from an interpretive dynamic, an interpretive stance that's different from what we normally hear. So, more than anything, they're food for thought. You consider what is attention, and you feel into that. Then you say, what is consciousness? And you feel into that. And then you feel, what are the differences, not in terms of rational thought. Well, they must be this and that and the other. Some philosopher said it was this and that. No, in terms of your own internal feelings. Many people are taught today to disregard such introspection because they consider it frivolous or ungrounded or impractical or well, it doesn't put food on the table. Well, funny enough, it can. Indirectly, it is the foundation of all the food you put on the table, because this is how when you disregard such things, that's how you're manipulated. That's how you're fooled. That's how you can't relate to other people. That's how you completely, cannot tap into your own resources. And that's how we wonder, well, how could things have gotten so bad? Well, who's the one who's really telling us that introspection is frivolous and ungrounded, impractical, etc., etc.? It's somebody who's reached people who haven't understood the value of it, who haven't experienced it, and convinced them never to do it, never to try.
It's the little demon on the left shoulder.
Exactly. And the little demon happens to be in all our governments and in all the corporations and everything, the organization of society. So meditation is not a technique. The technique aspect of meditation is just a reference. Everybody understands how to meditate, but one of the reasons I've gone to the trouble of making these talks is because I've seen so many YouTube videos and this and that. Meditate. You must meditate this. What the hell is that? And then they just show somebody sitting there, staring up in their heads. Exactly, and it's like, yes, that is a certain technique to help you understand it. But the thing is, you find your own way of doing it, as long as you get the essence of it. And the essence of it is self-reflection. Meditation, if you take the Sanskrit word, it means facing the mind. It means facing the identity. It means taking your left eyeball. Imagine you can stretch your left eyeball out of the socket like some stalk on a snail, and then take your right eyeball, face them to each other, and then touch the pupils together. What are you going to be seeing when you do that? What's going to register as your vision when you do that? This is what the meditator actually experiences. Take your left ear and listen to what your right ear is saying, and take your right ear and listen to what your left ear, Listen. That's where the sensory inversion comes in. It just gives you a better reference to get a sense of it. And then if you're able to hold that, if you're able to say, okay, I want to just focus on my vision now and see how that works, then you're able to sustain, because meditation is not something that you just tap in and leave. It needs to be sustained like physical exercise in order to alter the wiring of your brain and to alter the wiring of your DNA. That's why they say, well, you need to meditate an hour a day or whatever. You begin with small intervals like you do with exercise, small doses, and then you increase the doses, but you can meditate just as easily, well, not quite as easily, but it does help, out in the world as you can alone by yourself. Now again, how do you do meditation? A simple method is this. You basically just say the word I am, or I. And you realize that when you say a word like that, you get a certain feeling, a certain reorientation of your attention that's very, very subtle, so we don't notice it. We take it for granted, but it's there. Notice that reorientation of your attention that creates a vibration within you when you say the word I, the first personal pronoun. You know, this, and a lot of people are considered ego because they emphasize it. I, it's me, and me is different than I. Me is an object, whereas I is the actual internalizer. But somebody says I in order to emphasize that energy, and a lot of other people feel offended because their internalizing energy, their I awareness is weak. Many mystics say, well, you got to eliminate that. Well, if you eliminate that, then what reference do you have? Somebody else is just going to substitute it with their own version. What you need to do is find the ground from which the I emerges. The I is basically like a tree. Even the letter even looks like a tree, like a pillar. And it emerges from a certain ground of being. And so what meditation does is take that I thought, I, and then once you look beyond it, you say the word I, and you feel the feeling, and then ignore the word. Just focus on the feeling. And the feeling takes you somewhere. And that's where you stop your thoughts. You basically are too busy focusing on something more important, the source of your own self-reference. This can also be the source of any attention. When you look at anything or think about anything, it's mindfulness. Mindfulness is simply being aware of what's going on. Now, exactly. The thing about mindfulness, however, it's very tricky because you can split your mind into two. One of them is the mindful part, the observer, so to speak, and the other part is the one that's going about its business. And if you do that, the other part is going to just encroach on the mindful part until it disappears, and then you just stand back and say, oh, I'm not being mindful anymore. What's going on? Lost in thoughts about this or that or the other. Then you get back into mindfulness, and it starts over here, and it starts contracting because the thoughts, True mindfulness essentially doesn't allow the thoughts to come up in the first place because you're too busy being aware. Many times the mindful person will say, well, I need to have these thoughts over here so I have something to observe or something to be aware of. Observation and awareness are not the same thing necessarily. Observation means you're standing back and detached. So there's a gap. Awareness means you're in there. You can be detached, and awareness is an umbrella term basically that includes observation, but inservation, I don't want to create new words, but this isn't a standing back. This is a walking into what you're perceiving, what you're sensing. Your awareness basically, mindfulness in this sense means participation. It means you're experiencing it, you're involved. And so this involvement eventually becomes the focus on the mindful one, on the dynamic, on the energy of mindfulness becomes primary, so the rest just falls away. So if you notice that your thoughts are actually quieting on their own, then you're being mindful. If you notice that you're going through this dance, then there's a part of you that's basically off in the corner and keeping your thoughts going. And this part of you has an investment in doing so. In any case, that's part of the meditative dynamic, is basically going through all these things. But essentially the goal of meditation is not to keep dancing these dances. The goal of meditation is to be able to reach the ground of being. I mentioned before an analogy. Our thoughts and feelings and everything we experience, our perceptions of reality, are like waves in an ocean. They're vibrations. Meditation gets you in tune with the ocean itself, where the waves are coming from. This is the source of our attention. This is the source of our identity. This is where the higher self comes from. This is the key to developing abilities, because when you combine this with your energy sense, you can actually become a participator in a reality creator. You can also delete programs without denying yourself, because the programs are not feelings. The programs repress feelings, they manipulate feelings, they control them. They are not the feelings themselves. Many spiritual people equate feelings with thoughts. This is a fallacy. And it's also unhealthy because you end up trying to quiet your feelings. And thus, when they see somebody being negative, then they say, okay, shut up, you're just perpetuating. Well, if somebody's spouting off some stupid idea, then you can tell them to be quiet because they're perpetuating a whole bunch of delusional states with that idea. Let them reconsider. Let them think in other ways. Let them just introspect and find the ground of their being and see where that idea comes from. What are the motivations? But an idea is not going to hurt. We're meant to reform and unform and deform and recreate ideas. We're meant to form them, delete them, dissolve them. So many of these things that pertain to thoughts have been generalized to feelings and then generalized to creation itself. Oh, creation must be destroyed because, in order to be reborn, we have to destroy it completely because that's what happens with the meditative dynamic. Your program is destroyed. It's deconstructed. It's brought back into the medium from which it came, so the form of it, it's gone. It's like ironing out a wrinkle in a carpet, But you can't apply this to your feelings because they're your essence. Your feelings only change when the energy itself runs its course in a way that feels right. You cannot cause thoughts to change feelings. Feelings change feelings. Thoughts provide a reference and assistance. They are the lover. You almost have like spirit and matter. And in that sense, they are meant to unite, become one, but at the same time, they do so as lovers. And you don't eat your lover. You're not a cannibal. You don't dominate your lover and force them to be a certain way because, we're one anyway, so we're going to do it my way. That's the way many people think. That's how they try to convert other people into a reality frame they feel is flimsy, so they need group support. We all do this. Religious people do this. This is one of the reasons why I think people are offended by satire, because it challenges their reality frame, in a way that makes it seem like everybody else is okay with their own, because everybody laughs whenever it's somebody else's belief system that is, or if you're on the side that basically disagrees with it. But if you're watching your own reality crumble down around you through people's laughter, then it becomes, to them a humiliating experience. So to be able to stand satire, to be able to dish it out and take it, you also need to have feelings sensitive enough to know when somebody's actually not really being satirical. They're being, they intend to harm you. They intend to hurt you through dismantling your belief system or to control you and all of these things. This all occurs through the understanding and the experience of the ocean behind the waves. So a simple exercise, a meditation basically, is something I'm going to give when I finish this write-up, hopefully by next week. It combines energy and everything, and it's not the only, it's just a methodology that can help to give people an idea. I mean, we can talk about this till the cows come home, and you still will say, well, what the hell is he talking about? He's not talking like Swami so-and-so. He's not talking like the other guy, So, and I'm doing this on purpose because, people have been meditating for a hell of a long time, and very few have gotten real results out of it. And the ones who've gotten real results out of it are the ones that have connected with their feelings about it, as opposed to the literal meaning of any kind of dogma. And so, but the thing is, a lot of our feelings are conditioned, they're manipulated. It's not just, just trust your feelings blindly. Explore them. And this is another thing, because when you get into meditation, true meditation, with all the other things, that leads to the zero state, which is not zero, but to the oceanic type state, which is not expansive or contracting. It encompasses all of that. When you reach that state, you can actually, how shall we say, accept the negative feelings without being locked into them much better than before. Many times we get into negative feelings, and this is what happens. We experience them, we go through a hell of a, bad time, experience them, painful, whatever, and then they run their course, they die down, or we fall asleep, and then we're okay the next day, And the thing is that, but did healing actually occur when we were experiencing them? A lot of people go through perpetual negative emotions. They cry endlessly. They rave endlessly. It's almost like the rage never ends. And they don't know what to do about it. So they resort to repression. But if you can have a reference frame in the background or source of your own attention, then you
You're
can
at 30 minutes, by the way.
Okay. Then you can actually focus on the nature of it, which is love. You can say, it's not going to come and slap you in the face. It's more like you need to move through it and affirm it yourself in the sense of, is your nature love? And experience it, and it will say, yes, but you've been so deconditioned against it that it's going to take some time to naturally feel it. All you need to do is intend that you're feeling it while in the oceanic state, and it's going to move into bliss. Mystics, however, make the mistake of while they're telling us to not be attached to anything and to be detached from everything, they're the ones that are attached to bliss. And to this state and deny what needs healing. It's crying out for healing, and they either call it evil or an illusion or whatever. But when you can experience this well-being, or the root or a source of well-being, then you experience the fertilizing energy of spirit that is the healer of everything else. And this needs to be done through the body. It cannot be done in some la-la land. And so, in that sense, stopping the thoughts is not a halting like you pull a lever, but you're actually starving the mechanism of programming, and you're focusing on what's the source of your own attention. Then you can start thinking again, but you'll notice your thoughts are of a different quality. If you meditate truly for a period of time, even an hour or whatever, you'll notice that your thoughts afterward are different. It's not just they're calm, they're clearer, you're less prone to conditioning, your discernment is better. You can notice these differences, and as you notice and affirm them, it's going to make a big, it's part of the progress. Now, in my next talk, I'm going to synthesize all of these things together in something practical. For now, the best exercise somebody can do is focus on their own sense of I am. Am is the verb. It's actually when you take out the word and you have the feeling of am, that's much closer to the oceanic, to the ocean instead of the waves. But the I thought is both a hindrance because it locks us in a certain frame, but it's also an access. So we can play with these things, I and am. Me is more an object, and it's defined as a delimiter. It limits us, me, strict as opposed to everything else. But I has a different tone. Experience these, what do you feel when you say I? What do you feel when you say am? What do you feel when you say me? They're not the same. And how do they come together? So this is basically what I wanted to say today, and next time we'll get into what enlightenment is, which I've talked about all this while. It's basically what the oceanic state gives us, its nature unveiled. So thank you once again for listening. I hope I haven't gone too much over.
33 minutes. Thank you, Aristo. You have a beautiful week, and we'll connect again next Friday.
All right.